beware the Christian pitch to join multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
So you don't have a problem with big institutions. You don't have a problem with corporations, but you definitely laid out this argument against multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
Walk me through some of this article and kind of your issues with multi-level marketing, how pervasive it's become in the church and almost kind of like a false church.
Yeah. No, right on. So the first thing I would say is that I didn't set out to write about this. I didn't go looking for this topic. It came looking for me.
Okay.
And so the backstory, I think the very first time, it was actually a guy that I had served with in this ministry I was leading, and I ran into him and his wife at a coffee shop, and he was like, hey, I'm doing this business thing. I have a mentor, and I'd love to meet for coffee and tell you more because I think this could be a great job opportunity. And I was kind of weighing my options vocationally at that time. So anyways, I meet up with him, had a super awkward, strange exchange. Like my biggest regret is that I brought my wife.
Oh no.
Yeah. So me and my wife, we met with him and his wife.
As like a business opportunity?
A business opportunity. And we show up and they're like dressed to the nine, like full suit, dress. I literally asked them, hey, are you going to a wedding? And they're like, no, we like to look nice for meetings.
Okay.
And it was kind of like making a point, you know?
Yeah.
And so we get into this meeting and he tells me, hey, look, this opportunity, which I can't really explain to you, is the equivalent of a $200K a year job.
Red flag. This opportunity that I can't explain to you.
And shout out to my wife because she was actually much more direct and sniffed out the shadiness of this immediately and was asking questions. And it was me who was kind of like, hey, like, Jill, it's going to be fine. I want to hear more about this $200K a year job, you know?
Yeah.
But anyways, they would kind of just literally like laugh off these questions like, that's cute that you want to know more, but and then they gave us sort of an ultimatum and they handed us a book and said, if you can read this in 1 week, we can move forward in the process. Otherwise, this isn't for you.
Whoa.
So we take
this is a new tactic. I haven't heard of this.
Yeah.
If you could read this book in 1 week, we could move
So they're
forward.
creating urgency. Yeah.
What was the book?
All I remember is it was a business book, but I was at lunch with my wife afterwards and we opened the book. And the first thing I see is my best friend Donald Trump says.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can remember about the book. I don't know. I don't really know. As someone who knew Trump in business and had written a book, nothing about Trump in the story. But yeah, so we said no, obviously, and we turned it down. And from that point forward, I've been pitched in random places, probably 5 or 6 times at coffee shops.
Wow.
At the grocery store with my wife, at a farmer's market, after church, like getting lunch with people, at parks.
Whoa.
These are all true stories.
It's a lot of stuff. You're in Orange County, so maybe this is something in the air.
Something about me screams,
Yeah.
This dude wants to be a multi-level marketer.
Yeah.
To the point that I've developed kind of a routine and a response that I genuinely hope honors these people, but totally diffuses their methods. So like it's been at least 10, if not more times, that I've been approached. So the more that it's happened and the more that I've seen patterns, I think an important caveat here is that multi-level marketing is not evil in and of itself. Like if you want to sell things and if you want to build a team, great. Like that's a viable way to make a living. Where I get cautious and where I push back is the methods that are used and the culture inside of some of these organizations, the way that they treat people, the promises that they make that I would say they don't deliver. And probably my biggest concern is how they co-opt Christian discipleship language to pull people in and to market their business as discipleship. I'm not saying that you can't disciple people as an employee or within your business. But when you conflate the family of God with how you make money, I think it just muddies the water in a way that leaves people hurt. And so I have close friends that were deep into MLM. who have told me so many stories about how they were treated, the immense pressure that was put on them. Like, if I can just be real, I was just talking to your team about your work rhythm, the way that you treat them, how many days a week they work, sort of the margin you give them. And you guys work really hard here, but you've created a culture of health where you're caring for your people. And a lot of what I've heard from MLM is the exact opposite. It's, you have to listen to this many hours of content every week. You have to attend these meetings that go late into the night. People are looking over your shoulder, like breathing down your neck. Like, it's actually a really toxic environment. And then when you add in like, oh, by the way, this is how we honor God and this is our way of discipling people. It's pretty toxic stuff.
Yeah. So I actually did an MLM a long time ago. I'll tell you about that.
Here we go. Here we go.
Which is kind of embarrassing in hindsight. But let's go over this article, because you wrote this article.
Yeah.
And you talked about these different recruiting tactics. Right. And so there's 3 here. Love your family well. More money means more mission. And you need purpose, calling, meaning. A few proof texts about the benefits of wealth. You need better mentors. Recruiting builds relationships. Charity and clarity. Let's go over some of these. So you mentioned I think you mentioned the first one. Love your family well. A friend trying to recruit me into MLM presented this poignant picture. Imagine being a husband who gives his wife the best of his attention rather than the exhausted leftovers after work. This is so gross, man. This is so gross.
Yeah, this is actually a quote from a meeting that I had with someone in MLM. And he's like, look, man, like, you don't have to give your wife and kids. Funny thing was, I didn't even have kids then. But now I do. And he was like, look, the system's broken. And we come home exhausted, giving the people we love the most the fragments of our energy and attention. Wouldn't you want a better life? And the irony of that now, years later from that conversation, and now having so many friends within the system, is that it's just a lie. He had this whole vision of life that, man, you put in some real hard yards now for a couple years, and then you have all this margin and freedom later and for the rest of your life. Like, you retire in your 30s. Like, this is the vision they have. This is what their mentors are promoting and what they did. And I have a couple problems with that. First, it dishonors those that are in situations that don't afford that. So I actually think part of God's call in our lives is to work hard, and even when we're exhausted, to serve our spouse, to love our kids, to get after it, even when we're tired. Like, we pour out our lives and we work for, work-life balance. We work to be healthy, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Like, we get sleep, we eat well, we do all the things we can. But the reality is, like, some people have to work 2 jobs. Some people have to pull the night shift, and that is the reality. And MLM paints this utopian lie that you can have it all, that you can work hard for a little bit and then take it easy for a long time. And I just think, actually, that's selling people a false vision, because maybe where God has you working your night shift and still giving your all to love your family is a fragrant offering to Him.
That's good.
Is a blessing to Him, and is an example to other people of what it looks like to follow Jesus. Retiring in your 30s kind of sounds boring to me, to be honest. I don't want to retire in my 30s. Well, I'm almost out of them, so I don't think it's going to happen. Anyways, so loving your family well is one of the main talking points that I've heard. One of the best stories I've ever heard, like, because I've kind of mentored some younger guys at my church who get hit up at the gym by MLMers. We have good conversations. But one of my buddies, he's like early 20s. He was approached by an MLMer and decided to grab coffee. And I just happened to talk with him the day before. And so I checked in with him after he had gone to coffee. And one of the lines that this guy said to him was, I mean, do you want to shovel poop for the rest of your life?
Jeez.
Or do you want to have this incredible, like, work hard now, retire early life? But he literally was like, do you want to shovel poop for a living? Like, does that sound like a life? And the best part was, my buddy is from Northern California, where they have ranches, and had literally shoveled manure as a job.
That's awesome.
And so he was like, actually, man, I've done it, and it wasn't it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
So
it's not that bad, bud.
I just love like this extreme, stupid example, you know,
that's good.
was something he had actually done in his life.
Yeah.
So
this is good. You said the idea that traditional work depletes family health is reductionistic. If everyone believed this, we have no teachers, bank tellers, construction workers, grocers, and all others. That's so good. Okay, so more money means more mission. This is another one that's, I think, dangerous because it definitely makes it seem like the only way you could be on mission is if you can earn more money. And money definitely opens up tools and flexibility and other stuff, but there are people that do amazing stuff for Jesus that are middle-class people. And go ahead. Or poor people.
Poor.
Yeah. And there are middle-class people who never earn a huge wage per year, but because they're diligent, they will retire with dignity and stability, you know? Yeah. So unpack some of this and just kind of some of the tension here.
Yeah, so a lot of this comes from one or two conversations I actually had. And what was pitched was, hey, if you can accrue hundreds and thousands, whatever, millions of dollars, then you free up your time and you have resources to be generous. You can serve your church or missions or just your neighbors in ways that you couldn't. And it's totally reductionistic because there are bank tellers who love Jesus, who are called to do what they do as a means of blessing the world and glorifying God. Like the way that they interact with customers, the way that they do their work with integrity matters to our world. Same thing with teachers and construction workers. So to say that retirement somehow kickstarts true mission and having the financial means, you know, to actually serve God, like you have to store up all this cash. I mean, take your pick of things Jesus said that contradict this. And they anticipated this objection. So I remember this one guy was like, he quoted a proverb about how, you know, God blesses the righteous with wealth. But that's just a proof text. Yeah. That's using one verse and trying to stack it against a wall of other verses. I mean, Jesus talked more about money and its dangers than he talked about hell itself.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, Jesus had wealthy patrons in his corner that helped fund his ministry, that supported him. But he warned about, the dangers of wealth more than probably anything else.
Yeah. You know, as I've gone through and read a lot of the scriptures of Jesus talking about wealth, this is kind of where I've landed is like wealth can be very dangerous. And I don't think someone should set out for the sake of just wealth. However, being effective, useful to a community through a product or a service that actually helps people is a good venture. And then if wealth comes as a byproduct of that, then that's good. But if you're setting out to just get wealth and just become rich and just have things, materialism, or status, power, I think, generally speaking, that tends to be very shallow and will lead you astray. But if you're setting out to genuinely help people and solve a problem, and then wealth is the byproduct of that, which, by the way, is regional, meaning that like that is often the case in the West. If you're trying to help people be of use, be of utility, solve a problem, you will be rewarded with that in the West, but you won't always be rewarded in other places of the world. You know, you know what? Look at missionaries or pastors, like the most, in my opinion, the most useful, beneficial, helpful, yet not allowed in parts of the world. You know, so I think that's the tricky part is like you could do the same thing in different parts of the world and be rewarded totally differently. Yeah. It's a really it's a narrow-minded view of the world, and it cuts out like that could work potentially here in the West to accrue all this wealth and then serve, you know, and do mission type work for the rest of your life. But I would also say research about multi-level marketing is pretty like across the board. It's not successful, and most people burn out or give up, or even worse, stay in it and suffer financially and emotionally sometimes before getting out.
But this does not pan out financially for the majority of the people doing it. And they don't want people to see that. They want to show the car you get when you reach a certain level. They want to, there's always another carrot dangling, right? There's like those, the select few that make it, they don't show like what it's really cost to get there. They just show you the reward.
Yep.
But I would say from the personal relationships that I have, and this isn't prescriptive necessarily, but from the people that I know, by the time they achieved any level of success, it was no longer enjoyable because of what it costs to get there. And like the minute they earned something, they were thrown up on a stage and commanded to boast about it and to act like they're the happiest person on earth when actually inside they were exhausted and depleted. And if they were really honest with themselves, wanted to like get out.
Yeah. Well, I think that the tricky part is if you are working for a product that you genuinely love and you're like, hey, it makes sense for me to buy this product at wholesale, to store it and to sell it at a markup. I like the product. I use the product. I like the discount of the product at wholesale. And I don't mind selling it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think where it becomes wrong is when the product isn't the main sales pitch. It's the opportunity to sell the product for other people to sell the product. I think that's extremely sketch. And so again, I'll tell you about my experience in a moment and where I landed with it. This next one is interesting. You said you need better mentors, right? Most multi-level marketing, most multi-level marketers laud? What is that word? Laud.
Weird editor word.
Very, very weird word. Laud their mentors, usually a married couple with staggering financial accomplishments, then offer you access to these gurus if you jump through the required hoops.
Now that's me with some straight talk, right? No one's literally saying like, hey, you got to jump through these hoops. I'll grant you access. But that's absolutely what it is. So the idea is that, hey, I know these people. Oftentimes they're, 30-something retirees, but not always. I've heard some mentors are in their 50s, 60s. But the idea is that, hey, if you want to learn how to do this, if you want this lifestyle, if you are believing in this vision that I'm casting, then you can't just email my mentor. Like there are steps you have to take to get into the circle. So MLM is extremely based on hierarchy and like due diligence. Like you have to put in your time. You have to prove yourself to move up. And so if you just contrast that where it's like there's all these conditions and prerequisites just to get in the room with these experts. If you contrast that with the vision of the church, the reality of the church, where old and young are both in the room together. The old are sharing wisdom. Those that are younger are bringing like passion and their dreams and like a vitality to the community. Everything's free. Like there's no strings attached. Like, the couple that did my premarital counseling, they were in their 70s and they just sat with us and told us stories about their life, gave some incredible advice, and then stayed in relationship with us through our first years of marriage. Like that was free. Like that was out of the overflow of their heart. Amen. And that's how discipleship happens. It's life on life. It doesn't come with hoops, like humans love to create hierarchies and hoops. And it's the same thing when people brought their kids to Jesus thinking there weren't any hoops to jump through. And then suddenly the disciples create these hoops and like Jesus doesn't have time for them. And Jesus immediately tears down those walls and says, don't create barriers so that they can come and be blessed by me and so they can come sit with me. Like let the children come. And in the same way, God says to all his kids, like do that for one another. Like I've made it possible for you to come to me freely, but also like be one. Those that have a lot should sit with those that have little. Those that are young should sit with those that are old. Those with a lot of experience should sit with those that are just starting out. And MLM creates what I believe to be a toxic hierarchy that holds wisdom captive until you somehow jump through these hoops. And again, the church offers it for free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's such a beautiful picture because I think even like I serve in my young adults ministry at our church.
Yeah.
I do the FPU group, which is super fun. And as someone that has a degree of status or wealth or whatever, it's a huge blessing for me to serve and just be present and available, accessible without any hoops. Like I'm very accessible in my local church to the guy that's maybe 10, 15 years younger than me, just dating and just needs some guidance and a big brother to kind of help him along. That is to me is as much of a blessing to be available to folks than it is for folks who may have access to someone that's a season or two ahead or where they may want to aspire to be. So I'm totally with you there. So let me tell you a little bit about my background.
Yeah, I want to know what product I can buy from you.
Yeah, there's no product.
Do you still have boxes of supply?
No, it's never like that. So all my friends did it while I was in my senior year of high school. And right when I turned 18, I got recruited.
Prime age.
And I got recruited into, at the time, it was called prepaid legal. Now it's called Legal Shield. And basically for $25 a month, $30 a month, you can basically have certain legal services accessible to you. Reading contracts, if you get pulled over, you had like a little card, you could say, hey, do I need to call my attorney? And there would be like a paralegal available for you. It came along with a free estate planning will that they would do for you. So it wasn't a bad service if you needed anything legally related on a very basic level. It can go very deep, but on a basic level. So I ended up, there was 5 levels, associate, senior associate, manager, director, executive director. And I ended up within 6 months becoming a manager. So I was like in the halfway point because I really thought like, oh, this is a good service for $25 a month. It's worth it to have this around in case you ever need someone to read a contract, someone to do this, right? And what I didn't like was the constant need to recruit your friends and family. Like that felt iffy.
Was that pushed on you a lot?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So like outside of it being a good service, like the building the team was the way you really made money in it, right? Like you could set up a bunch of meetings and just sell it. And it was, the advances were good because they were advancing you for a year of the service. So you sell it, someone signed up for $25 and they would advance you for whatever, $250 or something like that. And so I made money. I had built a team, but I kind of was hit with this epiphany of like, this is useful in terms of understanding how sales work, in terms of understanding how to manage my time, in terms of understanding how to change my mindset. Why am I selling someone else's product? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I early on was like, well, I say I want to make music and art. Why don't I just take the good from this and transition it into selling my own stuff, which then I literally just started selling tickets to my own concerts. Hey, I'm throwing a concert. I need you to buy a ticket for me. Yeah. And so then I literally became the guy that whenever I threw a concert, I knew I could sell 200 to 400 or 500 tickets, literally on my own by just calling all my friends and family and asking them. And they were way more excited to buy a ticket, a $20 ticket to go to my concert than they were to pull up to some stupid event and get this rah version. And so I extracted a lot of like practical wisdom and like books and like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and like those sorts of, know, books that were valuable. But I never liked the model of like selling someone else's product that it may or may not need, but you're not even really selling the product. You're really selling them this dream of financial independence. And so, I did it for 6 months, did okay at it, bounced, got started doing my own music thing. And I was done. Maybe it wasn't even 6 months because I think my first album came out in May. And by that time, so I started in December, May, I was done. I was like, cool. And so like I never looked back and I just never went. And I've been people try to recruit me for stuff. And I'm just like, why? Yeah.
Like recently?
Yeah. Like people from different sales companies.
You're a prime candidate. You got a YouTube channel?
Yeah. Insurance companies that are like, I'm like, I don't want to sell whole life insurance. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I'm good. I got my term. So anyway, so I've seen some utility from it, but I generally agree that I think it's whenever you're selling someone a dream, I just feel like that's icky. You know, when you're selling someone an opportunity, not giving them the tools to build their own dream or build their own opportunity, but like actually selling them the opportunity, I think is just super icky.